Inspirational speaker is Debbie Hazelton. She is a holistic, I'm going to reach out and shake your hand.
Yep.
There you go.
All right.
Holistic practitioner. She's been ordained since 1992. Involved with metaphysics since the 60s.
Oh, Lord.
I was born then. Wrote 2 books, The Courage to See and Solving the Self-Esteem Puzzle. And she's currently studying Beyond Quantum Healing and reveling in how fortunate she is to live in the unseen, where much of spirit dwells. Debbie Hazelton.
Thank you. Thank you, Annie Mac. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Hello. And hello, Facebook, and hello when I can get this on YouTube, and it's always great. It's such a privilege. I knew when I was a teacher, I taught on the college level, and I always knew that it was like Spirit's sense of humor would say, ha, 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 ha. I'll let you speak. I'll let you teach, because that's when I can get through to you. So it's a privilege and an honor. And I'm so proud of SEC and all that we are continuing to become, and I'm so thrilled that we have Audrey with us in this wonderful role. It's so great, I gotta say. Yeah. So I have a habit of taking these talks that are what are in the national listing and turning them upside down and inside out, because that's what works for me. I just can't quite do it as it's written. And that's why most of us are here. We don't want to do things the way they're written either, right? Individual thinking and all that good stuff. So we're talking about spiritual mind treatment, also known as affirmative prayer. And boy, have I got a spin on this. So let's look at what it is, what it's not, what gets in the way. Because, you know, if we know it, we know how to do it, we know what we're supposed to do, what gets in the way of it working? Someone came up to me this morning and said, boy, do I need a refresher on affirmative prayer. And so then what helps it work? So I found myself thinking, first of all, what were my first things about prayer as a little kid? And I wonder, for you, what do you remember about prayer when you were growing up? In my house, I heard that now I lay me down to sleep thing, and I'm thinking, what in the world are they talking about? And then they'd say, God bless all these different people, and I learned early what that really meant was to see how many names I could repeat and remember. And then we said grace at the table twice a year. That's really kind of sad. They said it in the schools, and it's kind of funny to think back that we said grace in the schools and assumed that everyone was Christian. That's kind of weird. I mean, what about those who are not and were not? Wow. So we said grace twice a year, and I remember there being this thing of, okay, who's going to say it? Thanksgiving and Christmas, who's going to say it? And my sister would go, ask Debbie. I don't want to do it. And so then I would get that I wasn't supposed to want to do it. I really did want to do it. But I would say, no, ask Judy. That was her name. My sister's name is her name. So we would go back and forth, and I would pretend that I didn't want to do it. But I really did. And so I would eventually, did this thing go out? Okay. I would eventually, one of us would say it, but then another lesson was when I was in Unity, and I had teachers. I had a teacher in 7th grade that exposed me to science of mind, and then later Unity when I was in college, and I had people that talked about affirmative prayer. So I was at a Unity church, and this speaker was there, a guest speaker, and she was much more old-timey in her approach, old rhetoric. And she said, let us pray, and then she went into this old-sounding rhetoric, and something inside me went, no. When she first said, let us pray, I had that warm feeling inside of, oh, yes, I could feel it in my heart, yes, connecting to Source. I didn't know what to call it, but yes, I knew it. And then when she said all that rhetoric, I went, no. And I knew right then the desire was the prayer. The desire to connect was the prayer. And from then, everything else is already known. That passage, before ye call, I will answer. Before we even speak the word, all that other stuff is just us getting ourself together, us getting in alignment between the conscious mind and the higher self. But God knows the desires of our hearts. So as we call, our need is already known. So later on, I had the opportunity to spend a lot of time around someone who's Japanese, and I noticed that she reversed the letters L and R. And I thought about this one day, and I thought, wow, so she would say it's time to play when it was time to pray. And she would say, my children are going to go out to pray when it was time to play. And I thought, now that's interesting. What if we took the attributes of one and put them in with the other? You know how I like to mix things up. So what if we took the lightheartedness of play, the joy of play, even the trust, the creativity, and the imagination of play, and brought that into our pray or our prayer time? And what if we took the steadfast trust that we sometimes know when we're really centered, and maybe even often know? What if we took that steadfast trust, that focus, that yes, I know, I'm trusting, I believe that all things happen in the right and perfect way, and we bring that into our playtime instead of that sort of, oh, I'm gonna beat that one, or whatever we do for competition. So what if we mix them up? And what if a player really then becomes a prayer? And I was thinking about that word prayer. If you say it with a southern accent, it's a prayer. But if you think of it also the way we often do as we say a prayer, then it's just a prayer. So we could be a prayer, someone who is praying, and we could also be and know that we are doing prayer. We are doing that, being that prayer. So it's interesting. Now, sometimes people ask for prayer, and it's sort of like, hey, will you talk to the big guy upstairs for me? Will you sign my petition and put in my vote? Because if I get enough votes, maybe God will do what I want. Wow, that's not how it works. And we know that because that's why we're here. But sometimes some of us are here because of what we got tired of that didn't work for us. And sometimes that we're still looking for how to make it work. And so we know that those petitions and we also sometimes we hear that people think, well, let me get this person to pray for me because they have more power than I do. No, we all have that same amount of power. We all know that it's really us, and it's the God within us, it's the oneness that we are, and it's really getting ourselves on, I think of it sometimes like balanced on the bike. If I'm balanced on that bike, or if I'm able to stand with that book on my head, I don't fall off the bike or the book doesn't fall off my head, I'm in balance. I think that's what prayer does for us. It helps us to get in balance. This is not a real popular metaphysical idea, but there are people who believe that there is a war within us. It's not the war out there. It's not the international war. It's the war within us. Some would say it's between good and evil. Okay, we know that we're good. We know that we believe this, but does our behavior support our beliefs? Do we say things that are not in harmony with what we believe? Do we eat and do other things to our temple, which is that God-given container vehicle for our expression and our experience, do we do things with that temple that are not in our best interest, in the highest best interest for taking care of that temple? So self-talk is very important. And to make sure that we say what we believe and that we're doing what we believe, that we're in integrity. Now, what some of the things that don't work? Beware of buts. And I'm not talking about the ones that you were sitting on. But, there we go. But, I know I believe in New Thought, but. I know how to pray, but I listen to the news. I love you, but. What happens there is that the first part of the phrase ends up being negated. So how about, I know how to pray, and I need some support. I know how to pray, I know I believe in New Thought, and I'm scared with what I see on TV. Oh, turn that TV off. So what are we doing with what we're saying? Replaying the old stories. Sometimes I hear a lot of that old organ recital, or assuming that the future is based on the past. No, it doesn't have to be. So when we stop the old story, how many of you know that as you've moved along, your old story is just old? It's not what's now. You know that? My story changed hugely, even in recent years, from what it used to be. It's amazing. Worry. Worry communicates doubt and mistrust, feeds negativity, and it actually is probably the worst thing for our health. Worry is probably the worst thing. And it's really, what if somebody says to you, I trust you. I want you to do this job. I trust you with this task. And then every few minutes, they're worrying. Are you sure you're okay? Are you sure you got it right? Wait a minute, I don't know if I can, wait, I don't know. So what does that communicate? It communicates a lack of trust. It communicates that really, maybe we're not ready to give what it is over to Spirit. The more we give it over, the better we are for really allowing the Spirit, the guides, the angels, whoever, whatever, to do that perfect work, the more we give it over. And now I did a talk one time, a workshop called Junk Food Communication, Deep Fried Feelings and Interpersonal Indigestion. And I like to kind of switch things around. So it was a way of looking at communication by looking at food. So I want to look at health habits by looking at pills and vitamins and things like that. So I was looking one time at a bookstore for a wellness workbook, and I called them up. I said, do you have the wellness workbook? They said, the what? And I said, wellness. And they said, I don't understand what you're saying. I said, wellness, and WELLNESS, the opposite of illness. She said, oh, illness, wellness, okay. Illness was the frame of reference. So isn't that interesting? So we can think of what we want to do for ourselves in a way by thinking about vitamins and pills. And when I think about vitamins, I can't help but to say, Vita, Vita, Vegetamin. You know that old I Love Lucy commercial? She had to take her vitamins over and over again. Oh man, she was getting the effect of those, all the alcohol in there. But we can think of vitamin B as in belief and behavior. And we can think of vitamin C as communication. Am I really saying what I mean, even to the honest part of myself? Am I really communicating from my heart what I really mean? And do I have compassion? Vitamin C also, compassion, remembering that everyone else is also challenged, that we are all having that human experience while we are spiritual beings. We are having that human experience, and so is everyone else, so having some compassion. Vitamin E, one of my favorites. Empathy, empathy, empathy. If the more we have empathy, oh my gosh, the better. For ourselves, it's a way of letting go of things. It's a way of leveling the playing field and feeling that oneness that we all have. And then I'm going to talk about an F word, but it's not the one that some people think. I'm talking about a 3-syllabled F word. It could be a vitamin, but I'm talking about forgiveness. Oh man. Now, some people just think that forgiveness is, wow, something they don't have to do, or something that maybe is just too difficult. Forgiveness, I think, is the most potent medicine we have. And if we are willing to just say, okay, Spirit, help me release this, help me forgive this one, it will go. But forgiveness can take a little getting used to. It can feel like the aftertaste after swallowing a huge antibiotic. Remember those? You swallow that, you go, oh man, that was awful. It can feel really awful at first, but after a while, it just slides down, slides through. And I like to ask, am I for or against giving? And I think of forgiveness really not so much as an antibiotic today, but a probiotic. So, okay. So we could have vitamin G for gratitude, and we can have vitamin L for laughter. See, I'm making up vitamins they never thought of. Vitamin K for kindness. So when we do these things, guess what? We become so inspired, which is to be filled with spirit, inspired. We are already then in prayerful consciousness. We're already in it because we're aligning ourselves with the heart. You know, we can have lots of steps, and we're going to run quickly through the steps that are here for CSL. But really, what is important is coming from the heart and connecting with the heart. There's heart math we'll talk about if you ever are into heart math. They're talking about breathing in through the heart and out through the heart. So what's important, no matter how you pray, is to pray from the heart. And that's why having these vitamins or ideas about another probiotic are so important, because we can get aligned in our hearts and with our hearts. But if we talk about the steps, Desi wanted to make sure I had these. We talk about recognition. So we recognize that there is only one God. There's only one presence in the universe. And then that presence is my life. I am one with that presence, unified with that presence. When we go to realization, therefore, I realize that this magnificence, because this essence, presence is everywhere, that means that all is well, all is perfect. I think of Myrtle Fillmore when she said, she had that illumination. I'm a child of God, therefore I cannot inherit sickness. I am totally well. And she got well from tuberculosis. We move to thanks. And wow, there's nothing like thankfulness. Thankfulness, I give you thanks. I give thanks that all is well. I give thanks for my perfect health. I give thanks for the perfect outworking of all things for each and every person that I'm praying for. And then I release it. I let it go. I cast the burden. I give it to Spirit. And I trust Spirit to handle it. Don't dig it up and keep wondering if it's growing. So we talk about, I noticed in the notes for this, they had a lot about faith and working with faith to be in a total faith consciousness. I think of it as trust. Just really trusting that loving presence and giving it to God, and then letting it go, really knowing that all is well. That's the affirmative, knowing and thanking in advance. When you thank in advance, though, remember, I like to add things like this or something better, because we don't want to limit it. I want $10,000. No, this or something better. And or to say, as Florence Scovel Shinn said, under grace and in perfect ways. Because I don't want it in the wrong way. I want it in the best possible way. So I think that as we come into that consciousness, as we affirm, as we do all these wonderful things, then what we need to also do is to take action in the direction of what we're wanting. So like I said, if we say, oh, I believe in this, and then we do the opposite, well, that's not really taking positive action. So we need to take action in the direction of what it is we're really wanting. Okay, so let's first say our affirmation, and then I have one for you, another one, and then we'll go into a little prayer. Affirmation is on the PowerPoint, I believe, or in your bulletin. My words and actions are a direct reflection of my faith. With every prayer, I embody an even greater sense of my own divinity. And then I want you to repeat this after me. I am God's prayer in action. I am God's prayer in action. Okay, so let us pray. Spirit, we recognize that you are the one presence that is everywhere present in us, through us, as us. And as we tune in to this presence, we know that we are absolutely supported. And the more that we lean on this support that is everywhere all around us, the stronger this support becomes. And so we do lean and trust, and we share any concerns. We actually put them into this support that's all around us, and trusting and knowing that, gracious Spirit, you are taking care of everything already in advance. It is already done. It is already done. And so we give thanks for all the ways that in which you're blessing each and every one of us constantly. And so it is.